What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with, did Kevin Holland just retire? In a move that has left fight fans baffled, Kevin Holland has seemingly announced his retirement from MMA. On the heels of his lopsided loss to Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 279, Trailblazer has posted on Instagram that after getting paid for taking the fight on short notice, he's retiring. The announcement took everyone by surprise given that Holland is one of the most active fighters on the roster. However, with not much time until the streaking contender turns 30, it seems he's ready to call it quits. In his post, Holland indicated that he was paid quite well for taking the fight with Chimaev on short notice, contradicting what UFC president Dana White stated following UFC 279, where he said that every fighter on the card has a contract and no one received a pay bump for the last-minute reshuffle. Despite the announcement, fans don't seem to believe that Holland is actually retired. With many believing that the move is either a publicity stunt or only temporary, we can only guess as to what Holland's next move will be. If this is in fact the end, it would cement Holland as one of the biggest what-ifs in MMA alongside the likes of TJ Grant and Zabit Magomedsharipov. After signing to the UFC following his Dana White's Contender Series win in 2018, Holland competed 2 more times in 2018 as he made himself a staple of the UFC roster. In 2020, Holland tied the UFC record for most wins in a calendar year when he knocked out Jacare Souza at UFC 256 to pick up his 5th win of the year. Despite his early success, he went on a 2-fight losing streak in 2021, prompting a move to welterweight that saw the Trailblazer return to the win column with back-to-back wins in 2022 before then losing to Chimaev earlier this month. Do you think Holland is truly retired? Give us your thoughts down below. Reza Madadi fires back at Khabib following comments regarding Chimaev. When Khamzat Chimaev missed weight by a whopping 8.5 pounds for his UFC 279 headlining bout, many were quick to throw out theories regarding why the streaking prospect missed the required weight by so much. With UFC president Dana White revealing that the UFC's doctor visited Chimaev the morning of the weigh-in and advised him to stop cutting weight, some changed their stance on the matter. One individual who didn't, however, was UFC Hall of Famer Khabib Nurmagomedov, who explained that he believes Chimaev wouldn't have missed weight if he had surrounded himself with more Muslims who would have held him more accountable. The Eagles' comments weren't exactly well received by the MMA community, or by Chimaev's team. In fact, Chimaev's teammate, Mad Dog Reza Madadi, went as far as to pen a lengthy statement to Nurmagomedov, explaining that their team is made up of good people from all different backgrounds and faiths, all united behind the goal of helping their fighter perform to the best of his abilities. While Madadi didn't exactly disclose why Chimaev had missed weight, he did explain that the 3-time Swedish national wrestling champion would certainly learn from his mistakes, just like the Eagle did when he missed weight. So far, no response yet from Nurmagomedov. However, given the fact that the UFC Hall of Famer does a considerable amount of Q&As with the media since taking over Eagle FC, odds are we'll get a response soon. Next up, Joe Rogan weighs in on Jon Jones' move to heavyweight. Fight fans have been anxiously awaiting the return of Jon Jones for quite some time now. After defeating Dominic Reyes to defend his light heavyweight championship, all signs pointed to Jones moving up to heavyweight to challenge for his 2nd championship belt. Despite that, Jones engaged in a public spat with the UFC brass. In the midst of an ongoing beef with the promotion and UFC president Dana White, Jones announced that summer that he was relinquishing his coveted 205-pound championship belt. Over the next 2 years, Jones continued to tease his move to heavyweight on social media, posting numerous pictures and videos of himself looking incredibly bulked up in anticipation of his heavyweight debut. Despite that, there has been no word yet as to when Jones will actually make his debut. This has left many to speculate as to how Jon Jones will look when he finally steps foot in the octagon given the lengthy amount of time off since his last fight. During a recent episode of the Joe Rogan Experience with Anatomy of a Fighter's Will Harris, Rogan spoke about the incredible fight IQ of Jones that helped the dominant fighter become the youngest fighter to ever wear UFC gold. The pair also couldn't help but point out the fact that although he's been sidelined for 2 years, Johnny Bones is still younger than many fighters who have captured UFC gold, including heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou. When Jones finally makes his heavyweight debut, who do you want to see him fight? Give us your thoughts in the comment section down below, and before we continue, make sure you give that like button some love and be sure to subscribe to the MMA Zone for all of the latest news. Yoel Romero slams Pampered Israel Adesanya. Despite no longer being in the UFC, it's undeniable that Yoel Romero is still one of the biggest stars in combat sports today. The former Olympian and Pan Am champion has one of the most unique careers in the history of MMA since entering the UFC just 5 bouts into his professional career at 36 years old. Regardless of his age, Romero has managed to remain one of the most explosive fighters in the sport. Although he has plenty of highlight footage to his name, there's one fight that looms overhead as a sore spot on his record: a lackluster decision loss to Israel Adesanya in 2020 in a failed bid for the middleweight title. The bout was a peculiar one when it was first announced, with many questioning why a fighter in the midst of a 2-fight skid had been awarded a title shot. Although the bout was a close one, it certainly wasn't because both men performed spectacularly. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Over the course of the 5-round affair, both men drew considerable criticism for a lack of activity during the bout. After Adesanya was awarded the decision win, many were quick to blame both the champion and challenger for the lackluster affair, including UFC president Dana White. Recently, Adesanya reflected on the bout, explaining that the criticism he received afterwards marked a low point in his career where he felt like fight fans had turned on him while deflecting blame for the uneventful scrap. His comments didn't sit too well with Yoel Romero, who spoke on a recent episode of the MMA Hour, saying, "What happened? He starts to fight and he feels my power and all of a sudden, what? He starts running away from me. I'm not going to start chasing after you. That's not what I'm gonna do." The UFC was pampering him, was pampering Izzy, and basically I guess what they wanted was for me to go running after him. No, I'm not going to do that. If he was intimidated and didn't want to exchange punches with me, that's on him, not on me. All I did was stand up in there wanting to fight like a man and exchange blows. Who do you agree with? Do you think Romero deserves the blame as the challenger for not bringing the fight to the champ? Does Adesanya deserve blame for not cementing his status as champion? Or do both men deserve criticism for the lackluster affair? Give us your thoughts on the controversial bout down below. Last up, Mike Perry calls out Nate Diaz. Ever since Nate Diaz defeated Tony Ferguson in the main event of UFC 279, there has been no shortage of speculation regarding what the former Ultimate Fighter winner's next move would be. While many believe that Diaz would inevitably follow in the footsteps of other UFC fighters like Conor McGregor and Tyron Woodley and make the move to boxing, a recent photo with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon led many fans to believe that the younger Diaz brother could be WWE bound. While there are no shortage of potential opportunities for Diaz across numerous combat sports, a new name has now been thrown into the mix: Platinum Mike Perry. Fresh off a 6-round sudden death win over Michael Venom Page, Perry believes that Diaz needs to make the transition to bare-knuckle boxing so the two can meet in the center of the circular bare-knuckle ring. He spoke in a recent interview with MMA Fighting, saying,
he's still interested in some big fights in his career, and I think that's what it's about, is if he wants to accept the challenge himself. He loves to box. I know he likes jiu-jitsu too, so I don't know if it's something that he would be fully interested in, because without jiu-jitsu against me and just boxing, I don't know if he sees himself having a chance against me in the bare-knuckle boxing ring.
Diaz, of course, wouldn't be the first fighter to make the transition to bare-knuckle boxing after parting ways with the UFC. Former UFC fighters Chad Mendes and Paige Van Zandt also notably made the transition following the end of their runs with the promotion, with Mendes recently winning his debut in impressive fashion. With Perry's call-out, Diaz's free agency decision undeniably just got tougher. As we've mentioned previously, it's important to note that Diaz is still technically under contract with the UFC for 90 days following his last bout. After that time, the Stockton superstar will become an unrestricted free agent and face the difficult decision of what he would like to pursue next. What do you think is next? Give us your thoughts on Nate Diaz's next move in the comments down below. Thanks so much for joining us today. What do you make of what's going on in the fight world? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all of the latest news from the MMA Zone. See you next time.